They thought I was dead. They told everyone I was. But the moment I looked out that window and saw my ex-wife standing on my lawn with a baseball bat, I realized the lies had finally caught up with them. This is how I went from being abandoned, on my deathbed, to watching my former family get dragged away in handcuffs. When I moved into the quiet cul-de-sac on Oak Ridge Lane, I thought I had finally left the past behind me. My wife and daughter had disappeared from my life nearly a year ago, right when I needed them most. It was after my third hospital stay, and as I lay there, weak and stitched together by tubes, they simply stopped coming. No calls, no letters, no goodbyes, just gone. Sophia, my neighbor, was the first real friend I'd made since. She was kind without being nosy, and she never once pushed for information. She simply brought over a warm meal when I looked pale, waved from her porch when I mowed the lawn, and made the place feel just a bit less lonely. So, when she knocked on my door one chilly evening with worry in her eyes, I knew something was wrong. "There were 2 women here earlier," she said, softly. "They wandered around your yard, looked confused, waited in a car for a while. I nearly called the sheriff, but something stopped me. I thought they might be family." I stiffened. What did they look like? Her description matched them. My wife? My daughter? But how? Only my brother and his wife had my new address, and they had sworn never to give it out. Sophia touched my arm gently. "If they come back, don't go out there. I'll handle it, okay?" I nodded, still trying to piece together the impossibility of it all. Why now? After all this time? Later that night, I called my brother. He sounded guilty, his voice tight and anxious. "They've been harassing Carrara," he said. "They showed up at your old house, screaming at her and her roommate, demanding to know where you were." I swallowed hard. Carrara had bought the house from me. Technically, I'd signed it over when I was at my lowest, but she never abandoned me. In fact, she protected that house like it still belonged to me. "She's smart," my brother added. "She showed them the documents, shut them down quick." I felt a pang of guilt. This was my mess, and she was dealing with the fallout. I called her immediately to apologize. She was graceful about it, as always. "They won't get anything from me," she assured. "But you should be careful. They're desperate." The next day passed quietly. Then the second visit happened. It was mid-afternoon, and I was working in my home office when I heard a knock. I glanced at the security cameras. Them again. Sophia, ever the guardian, walked over to greet them while I remained inside, close to the door so I could listen. My ex-wife was telling some ridiculous story. "She said I died," I whispered aloud, shocked. Apparently, she'd told Sophia that her husband, not ex, had lived here before his recent untimely death. I had to sit down. There was no death certificate, no obituary, no record of my death anywhere. And yet, here she was, claiming the house as if I were a ghost haunting the floorboards. Sophia, bless her, played along masterfully. "Yes," she said, "Charlie lived here. He told me you left him. And he filed for a unilateral divorce. Didn't mention a death, though. Strange you say that." She even added a chilling detail. "He said he'd bequeath his assets to charity. No next of kin." The silence that followed made my skin crawl. Then came the confrontation. My ex snapped, screaming, accusing Sophia of sticking her nose where it didn't belong. Her voice echoed through the quiet neighborhood like a warning shot. I stayed behind the door, hands clenched, heart pounding. When they finally left, I walked over to Sophia's place to thank her. She laughed it off, but I could see the concern beneath her amusement. "She's dangerous," she said. "You need to be careful." I nodded. "If she comes back, I'll handle it myself." What I didn't know then was that the next visit would be anything but civil. It was 3 days later when chaos finally came crashing through. Literally. The morning had been quiet, deceptively calm. I was buried in my home office, deep in QA. Reports, headphones on, noise canceling dialed up. The outside world could have exploded, and I wouldn't have noticed. It wasn't until I got up to stretch and grabbed a glass of water that I heard it. The crash. Loud. Violent. The unmistakable sound of shattering glass. My blood ran cold. I sprinted into the living room and froze. My front window was a mess of broken shards. The cold breeze whipped in through a gaping hole. Outside, chaos reigned. Voices, screaming, movement. For a moment, I thought it was a robbery, a break-in. I couldn't have been more wrong. When I stepped out, the sight before me was almost surreal. Two of my elderly neighbors, Mr. Hendricks and Mrs. Zhao, were standing between my porch and the driveway, trying to block two wild figures from getting closer, my ex-wife and my daughter, Luna. Each of them held an aluminum bat, dented and dirty. Around them, my shattered potted plants lay in ruined heaps on the walkway. My ceramic bird bath was cracked in half. They'd been at this for a while, and I hadn't heard a thing. "What the hell's going on?" I shouted. My ex turned at the sound of my voice, her expression morphing into shock. Luna gasped audibly. They hadn't expected to see me. "Oh my God," my ex whispered. "You're alive?" I stormed forward, barely containing my fury. "Alive and very much done with you. What the hell do you think you're doing?" Luna's eyes filled with tears. My ex looked like she'd seen a ghost. We thought," she stammered, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you call us after the hospital? We would have come back." I laughed bitterly. "Come back? You walked out when I couldn't stand on my own. No calls, no messages, no goodbye, just gone. Now you're smashing my property and acting like the victim?" "I was scared," she shot back. "I didn't know how to handle it. We took vows," I cut her off. "In sickness and in health, you broke them." The weight of that moment hung in the air. The neighborhood had gone silent. Even the birds had stopped. Then she tried to pivot. "Luna's going to college next year. She needs help. We need help. Her tuition—" I stared at my daughter. "You mean the daughter who helped her mother hunt me down? Who stood there, bat in hand, smashing my property? That daughter." She wiped at her cheeks, lips trembling. "We didn't mean to hurt anything. We just thought, maybe, you'd help." I shook my head. "I'm ready to sign over all parental rights to you. You should have thought of this before you abandoned me." That was it. My ex-wife exploded. "You're so selfish. You've always been selfish," she screamed. "You're just bitter because I moved on without you. You tried to claim I was dead," I bellowed, and that's when she swung the bat. It came fast, aimed directly at my shoulder, but she never made contact. The flashing red and blue lights spilled across the lawn. The police had arrived. Within seconds, officers were separating everyone. My neighbors stepped back in relief. I pointed to the smashed window. "I want to press charges," I said without hesitation. My ex and Luna were handcuffed right there in the driveway. She sobbed, hysterical. Luna screamed my name, begging for forgiveness. The sight of them in the back of the police car would have broken me a year ago. But not today. I was done being the victim. After they were gone, I rigged up a tarp to cover the window. Sophia brought over some buckets to house the remains of my plants until I could replace the pots. We didn't say much, just drank coffee on the porch as the sun went down, our eyes lingering on the shards of broken glass. "They're not going to stop," I finally said. "No," she replied, "but you're not the same man they left behind." And I wasn't. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Even with the window boarded up and the front of the house secured, I kept thinking about the look in her eyes, that split-second shift from shock to greed, like seeing me alive was an inconvenience. They'd looked for a ghost and found a man still breathing. That's what rattled them. But it rattled me too. Why now? Why show up swinging bats and screaming about ownership? Why fabricate my death? It wasn't just desperation, it was strategy. So the next morning, I did what I do best. I dug for answers. Reached out to Kara first, the young woman who bought my old house and had been blindsided by their unannounced arrival weeks ago. She picked up on the first ring, her voice tight. "They came back, didn't they?" she asked. "I saw the footage online. One of your neighbors must have posted it. Your wife swinging that bat." "They're not my anything anymore," I muttered. "But yeah, they came back, and this time, they brought destruction." Kara sighed. "They harassed me and my roommate at the old place. Said they were grieving relatives. They thought you were dead." I hesitated. That's the part that doesn't make sense. Where would they get that idea? I never faked my death. Never even thought about it. Kara cleared her throat. "After they left, I found something weird. An envelope in the mailbox, addressed to your full name. Return address was from a law firm. I called the number and found out they'd sent your divorce paperwork to your mother-in-law's house. Your ex probably saw the envelope, never opened it, and assumed the worst. That explained part of it, but not all of it. Why act like next? Of kin? Why store my property like they were entitled to it? So I kept digging. I called my brother. He'd kept a healthy distance from all of this, but he answered when he saw my name. They showed up?" he asked. "Again?" "Yeah. Broke my window. Tried to assault me. They're in custody." He cursed under his breath. I was wondering when it would come to this. "What do you mean?" There was a long pause. "They've been circling, calling Carrara, asking questions about the house. Snooping around online. After your hospital release, they probably thought you wouldn't make it. But when they found Kara in the house instead, I think they assumed you'd passed and that the house had transferred ownership improperly. They thought I was dead and came looking for loot?" "Worse," he said. "I did a little research on your ex after the last run-in. Her mother passed away 2 months ago." I sat up straighter. "I didn't know that." "She didn't tell anyone." After the funeral, turns out the house they were living in didn't belong to her mother. It belonged to her mom's husband's cousin. When he found out, he kicked them out. They've been bouncing between motels since. So they lost everything. And when they returned to the old house and found Kara living there, they assumed you were dead and started looking into your assets. I let that sink in. The pieces finally connected. They had nowhere left to go. No property. No inheritance. No plan. And when the motel money dried up, they clung to the last thread they had. Me. That wasn't grief on her face at the front door. It was greed. She wasn't mourning the man she thought had died. She was scavenging for leftovers. But here's the thing. I wasn't leftovers. I wasn't the man they left in that hospital bed, clinging to breath and waiting for someone to visit. I was something else now. The final straw came in the mail that afternoon. A letter from the county DA. Luna would be receiving community service given her age and the fact that she'd never committed a crime before. But my ex-wife, she was being formally charged with vandalism, attempted breaking and entering, aggravated assault, and best of all, premeditation. Because they'd found screenshots from her phone. She had looked up my neighborhood, my full name, and guides on how to claim abandoned property, days before she showed up with that bat. Now it was all on record. I made one final call that evening to my attorney. "I want a restraining order," I said, "and I want it ironclad." He didn't ask questions. He just said, "I'm on it." The house was quiet again. Too quiet, almost. After weeks of anxiety, smashed windows, unexpected confrontations, and twisted lies, I finally had silence. But peace, that was something different. I stood by the window, looking out at the street where it had all happened. A new pane of glass had been installed. The broken pots replaced. Sophia had even brought over a plant to re-charm the front. I was grateful, But part of me still felt haunted by what that space had witnessed. The sound of a bat cracking against the glass. The look in my ex-wife's eyes when she realized I wasn't dead, just done. And Luna, standing beside her like a shadow of the girl I once knew. Quiet, complicit, and suddenly a stranger. I hadn't heard from either of them since the arrest. But I'd received an update from my lawyer earlier that morning. The restraining order had been granted, and not just a generic one. It was thorough. If either of them so much as texted me, there would be legal consequences. But it wasn't the legal win that stuck with me. It was something Luna had said just before the cops dragged them away. "Dad, we didn't have anyone else." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even remorse. It was an excuse, a justification carved from desperation. But it echoed in my head, replaying like a broken tape. They didn't have anyone else. And for a second, just a second, I'd felt the urge to turn back, to soften. But then I remembered the hospital, that empty chair beside my bed, my meals growing cold while I waited for a visit that never came. I remembered signing my own discharge papers with trembling hands because no one bothered to show up. They didn't have anyone else? Well, neither did I, and I rebuilt everything from nothing. A knock on the door pulled me out of my thoughts. For a moment, my chest tightened and I reached instinctively for the remote, pulling up the camera feed. It was Sophia, holding 2 cups of coffee. I exhaled. Opening the door felt like unlocking a new chapter. "Thought you might want a little closure," she said, handing me the cup. "Heard from the neighborhood grapevine that your ex has a hearing scheduled." "I heard," I replied, sipping the coffee. "They're probably hoping for a reduced sentence, playing the sympathy card." Sophia sat on the porch step, patting the spot beside her. "You think she'll show up again?" I shook my head. Not unless she wants another charge added to her record. But even if she does, this time I'm ready. Sophia nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "She wasn't here for you. She was here for what you could give her." "That's what hurt the most," I admitted. "I survived everything, only to find out the people I loved didn't mourn me. They waited until they thought I was gone to collect what they thought was theirs." "But it wasn't theirs," she said. "It was yours. And you're still here, still standing." There was something poetic about that. Later that night, I pulled out an old box from the closet, one of the last things I'd taken from my old life. Inside were faded pictures, handwritten cards from Luna, and even an old letter my wife had written when we first got married. It was like staring at ghosts. For a moment, I felt the weight of it all pressing on my chest. The grief, the betrayal, the echo of a life that never was. Then I took the box outside, set it down in the fire pit, lit the match. As the flames curled around the photos and papers, I felt something inside me shift. Not bitterness, not revenge. Freedom. True, complete freedom. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their explanations. I didn't need them. I had rebuilt my life, brick by brick, breath by breath, and I had kind neighbors, a stable home, and peace of mind. They tried to write my ending for me. But I'd taken the pen back, and this story, it was mine now, forever.